Time jumps are jarring in any TV series. The characters grow up, major events happen off-screen, and several actors are recast within the same season. But that's where House of the Dragon went wrong, and Andor's second season needs to avoid its biggest problem. So today, we're looking at how showrunner Tony Gilroy can avoid the time jump trap and deliver a satisfying finale to a stunning series. Let's jump in. First up, Tony Gilroy originally had a 5-season plan. Andor's first season takes place within a year, starting from 5 BBY and ending in 4 BBY. 12 episodes covering 12 months of someone's life seem like the ideal number, right? Well, that's what Tony Gilroy had in mind for the whole series. He wanted to cover 5 years of Cassian's life over 5 total seasons before the events of Rogue One. But Diego Luna wasn't really feeling the whole 5 seasons thing. Apparently, he said he'd die if asked to do 5 seasons of a TV series. And you know what? We see where he's coming from. Dedicating 5 years to something is a huge gamble for an actor. A TV show's success isn't guaranteed, especially if it's a prequel. It's even more of a gamble if the show's got a fan base as gigantic as Star Wars. We're sure the fans would have been fine with 5 seasons, but Luna's comments convinced Tony to condense Cassian's story into 2 seasons. Now, this works really well for season 1, since it's a streamlined story about Cassian's cynicism and how he kind of lost his purpose. But the second season also has 12 episodes, and it needs to say a lot in very little time. We don't know how Tony will do it, but we hope he can do it justice. Next, the problem with time jumps, and why House of the Dragon didn't do them well. Andor's second and final season has a lot of heavy lifting to do if it wants to avoid House of the Dragon's biggest flaw. You see, we don't want Andor falling into the same trap that House of the Dragon did. The Game of Thrones prequel wasn't bad in any way. In fact, it's an awesome show with gorgeous visuals and stunning production design. The problem was the major time skips and characters jumping all over the place. Now, we understand that the first season had to lift Olympic levels of weight in order to move the story along. The story so far has covered 20 years of House Targaryen's rule over Westeros, but we wish they had a few more episodes to tell a more comprehensive story, you know? Instead of 8 episodes, maybe HBO should have greenlit 12 episodes, just like Andor. That'd be a good number to focus on individual subplots and move the overarching story along. Now, what can Andor do to show Cassian's story in the best way possible? Now, so far, the latest news is that Andor Season 2 won't be dropping until 2024, and we don't know when in 2024 it'll be. So Tony's got plenty of time to streamline his vision. We know that the original cast and characters will show up, including Cassian, Luthen, Bix, Saw Gerrera, and Cyril. But how will the showrunner fit 4 years of storytelling into 12 episodes? Well, we have a few ideas, and the first one's pretty obvious. All the major events in Cassian's life need to happen on-screen, not off-screen. You'd be surprised by how many significant events happen off-screen in certain movies, the most blatant example being Professor Hulk's subplot in Avengers Endgame. Bruce overcame his rage and combined both his personas into one single body, and Bruce just narrates it to Steve, Natasha, and Scott over breakfast? Anyway, obvious narrative techniques aside, there are 2 ways that Tony could handle Season 2's time jumps. The first one's simple. 4 years of Cassian's life equal 48 months. Every episode could cover 4 months of his life within an hour of runtime. That's the simple way to do it, and an hour is more than enough to cover a significant chunk of his life. The other way is to structure the whole season around a few major events that take place within 4 years. So that means 2 episodes could cover 6 months, and then the next 2 could cover 1 year, slowing down the pace significantly. Finally, trust Tony to totally nail Season 2. There are 1,000 ways to tell Cassian's story, but not all of them are winners. Our ideas just scratch the surface of how you can tell a Star Wars story. 12 episodes might be exactly what the series needs to conclude its epic story. Besides, the series doesn't have to deal with a story as large as House of the Dragon. 20 years compared to 4 is nothing if you think about it. But every story has the potential to be brilliant. You just need the vision to fit the narrative. And Tony Gilroy has more than proved that he's up to the challenge. Now for some burning questions that Season 2 needs to answer. First, does Luthen have a connection with the Jedi? One of Andor's most interesting central players is Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen Rail. He's one of the key players that push Cassian on his journey towards the events of Rogue One. But as we've seen throughout Season 1, we don't know much about the character. He's a very behind-the-scenes kind of rebel leader and doesn't reveal much about his history. The most we hear about his past is in Episode 11 when he gives Lonnie a speech. He reveals that he once wrote an equation 15 years ago from where there's only one conclusion. Apparently, the conclusion is that he's damned for life. Now, 15 years is a very specific time dimension, and we think it's because the time frame lines up with Order 66, when the Jedi met their downfall at the hands of the Emperor Palpatine. Order 66 was a major plot development in both Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars animated series. So, was Luthen present during Order 66? Was he at the Jedi Temple, and did his equation have anything to do with starting the Order? We don't know, but we certainly hope Season 2 sheds some light on these mysteries. Up next, will Cassian find K2SO and reprogram him in Season 2? The sarcastic security droid K2SO was one of the highlights of Rogue One. Voiced by Alan Tudyk, he was one of the few characters that added comic relief to an otherwise bleak story. But sadly, Basically, he gave up his life so that the rebellion could continue its mission. He didn't survive the end of Rogue One, but since Andor's a prequel, he could still make an appearance. There are still 4 years of story left, so who's to say that Cassian doesn't run into K2SO somewhere? After all, Cassian did get choked by a KX series droid in Niamos, so maybe he'll meet another along his journey and reprogram it. But there's another story worth considering. What if K2SO is actually B2EMO? After Maarva's death, B2EMO is sent off with Bex, so isn't Cassian probably transferring B2EMO's programming to a KX series droid? We like that theory since it means K2SO is basically B2EMO in another body. Now, what happened to Kino Loy? Andy Serkis showing up as Shift Manager Kino Loy was a big surprise in Season 1. We were excited to see him play a character in Star Wars, and we also couldn't get enough of him. The Narkina 5 arc was one of the best narratives we've seen in a Star Wars series, and is right up there with the rescue episode in The Mandalorian 2nd season. At first, Kino's a low-key guy. He doesn't want to cause trouble, does what he's told, and keeps a low profile until he's released from Narkina 5. But when he learns that no one really escapes the place, and entire floors of workers can be executed on a whim, he becomes the leader of an uprising. The whole thing was epic to watch, especially when you see Cassian and Kino working together to rise against the guards. But just as they're about to escape via the ocean, Kino reveals that he can't swim. He reluctantly stays back, and Cassian is pushed off the edge by the oncoming mob of workers. His fate's currently unknown, but we never saw him die at the hands of the guards, so who knows what happened to him. We want to see Andy return as Kino in Season 2, and we want more backstory on the character, so let's hope Tony makes it happen. Lastly, where's Cassian's sister? Cassian's focus in the first episode is to track down his sister. The two got separated during their childhood, so his goal so far was to locate her whereabouts. But because of this, he ends up antagonizing and shooting 2 security officers, which jumpstarts the events of the whole series. Now, Cassian's goals evolve throughout the season, which means that his quest to find his sister is still unresolved. We don't know where she is, what happened to her after they got separated, or whether she's with the Empire somewhere. This feels like an intentional plot device by Gilroy, because it means that she'll turn up sometime in Season 2. But will she be Cassian's enemy, or will she join the Resistance? Well, we'll find out in 2024. And that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for watching. So, what are your expectations from Andor's final season? Do you think Kino Loy will return? Tell us down below. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos in the future. See you in the next one.
Congratulations. You are being rescued.
Identify yourself, Holcraft.
Sorry, can you repeat back, please? That I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror.